400 years ago, Emperor Shennong was in need of a rest. His reputation as a wise and benevolent ruler was strong, but took a concerted effort to uphold. His name, Shennong, translates as divine farmer, and with reason. He was guiding China's transformation from a land of nomads to a land of farmers. This was a monumental transition, one that required the population to learn the ins and outs of crop cultivation, tilling, and irrigation. But it also matched well with Shennong's fascination with the kingdom of plants. He was a skilled herbalist. Some even say he had a transparent stomach, all the better to see directly how the plants he ingested affected his digestive system. So it's no surprise that he chose to take his well-earned rest among a grove of attractive plants with glossy leaves and robust circular flowers. Shennong had brought with him a flask of water and quickly set up a pot over a small fire to boil it, a practice he knew was essential for making the water safe to drink. As the water began to bubble, a breath of wind passed over the hillside. A single leaf detached itself from one of the plants and drifted directly into the pot of boiling water. While many would have instinctively taken out the leaf immediately, Shennong did not. Instead, he took notice of the changing color of the water and the fragrant smells issuing from the pot. Intrigued, he decided to take a sip. The drink was delicious, and its calming and restorative effects were almost immediate. You might have already guessed the plant in question. Its name is Camellia sinensis, better known as tea. You're listening to Plant Connection. Life today can feel overwhelming, like we've drifted away from its natural rhythm. This podcast is your space to slow down, breathe, and rediscover the peace and clarity that come from reconnecting with the natural world. I'm your host, Lisa Cutshaw. Let's reconnect, one plant at a time. As I'm recording this, we have just emerged from a winter storm that brought heavy snow and bitter cold, and I am so grateful to be able to sit by a nice warm fire right by the wood stove with a hot cup of tea in my hand and look out the window at how pretty the snow looks. It's no small thing that little old me, in a quiet corner of the Blue Ridge Mountains, can so easily have access to tea, something that is very definitely not native here. The cultural impact of camellia is unquestionable. Approximately 5 billion cups of tea are drunk worldwide every day, making it the second most commonly consumed beverage after water. You also likely know something about the plant's participation in pivotal historic events, most notoriously the Boston Tea Party. But most of us are much more acquainted with tea bags than the plant itself. So what is this plant? And what is its significance beyond a soothing cuppa? As our opening tale suggests, Camellia sinensis is native to China, but there are many other camellia species, all originating from Eastern and Southern Asia, and these days found all over the world. Camellia sinensis is the only species used for brewing tea, while others are valued for their ornamental and ecological properties. While cultivated tea is normally kept at shrub height, in the wild, the plants can grow over 65 feet tall and can live for a century or more. The leaves are gorgeous, thick, glossy, and with serrated edges. The flowers, too, are famously attractive, though their size, shape, and color vary widely between species and cultivars. Though our opening story is likely at least partly mythological, Shennong was real and is credited with beginning the practice of tea drinking in China. For centuries, this practice was mainly restricted to the aristocracy and holy people. The practice extended out into neighboring territories, such as India and Japan, and this dispersal and many generations of selective breeding led to the emergence of the Camellia sinensis varieties that we're familiar with today. The teas that the different varieties produce are distinctly different, everything from Darjeeling to Assam. All have white flowers that carry a fragrant scent of jasmine. And while we might have a vague idea that tea is good for us, plenty of scientific studies have revealed tangible health benefits. Tea is rich in antioxidants, which help ward off cancer and aging. It also contains eugenol, a chemical that helps against inflammation and unwanted microbes, and supports a healthy brain. Green tea comes from the same plant as black tea. The leaves are simply steamed after picking, so they don't oxidize and turn black. a practice which may also help preserve some of their useful health properties. A number of large studies have supported this. One interesting study of Japanese communities living near green tea plantations showed they had exceptionally low incidences of cancer. Beyond its properties as a beverage, Camellia has a rich history of symbolism and legacy in its native range. In China, Camellia is known as Chaohua, I'm sure I'm butchering that, and is seen to symbolize the union between two lovers. The petals represent the woman, supported by the green calyx found underneath, which represents the male. Camellia is a little unusual in that when the flower falls, petals and calyx fall together, symbolizing eternal love and commitment between man and woman. Korean tradition interprets the flower in a similar way and often incorporates it into wedding decor as a symbol of commitment, loyalty, and lifelong happiness. In Japan, meanwhile, Camellia, or tsubaki in Japanese, was historically associated with the samurai. The clean falling of the flower, rather than wilting and gradually dropping petals, was seen as a clean end, like a warrior's noble and dignified death through battle or sacrifice. It continues to be used in Shinto ceremonies today. When Europeans arrived in the region, they were quick to note the popularity of this genus of plants. The word camellia harks back to this colonial appropriation. The name derives from a Jesuit missionary and pharmacist named Reverend Georg Kamel, who documented the wildlife of the Philippines for a European audience for the first time. Carl Linnaeus, the father of modern taxonomy, decided to honor his work by naming the tea genus after him. For a time, the Portuguese had the monopoly on tea imports to Europe. The East India Company tried to break this by importing camellia plants to Britain in the early 1700s, but mistakenly brought over the Japanese camellia, which doesn't make good tea. However, this species was soon recognized for its ornamental value, so the Brits kept them anyway. It didn't take long after that for ornamental camellias to begin to arrive in America, mostly brought over by wealthy landowners to decorate their gardens. As camellias became established in the Western world, they quickly became associated with luxury and taste. Victorian flower language dictated that camellia flowers signify perseverance, love, devotion, and admiration. White camellias also convey purity, while red camellias symbolize passion. The creative arts magnified the cultural impact of camellia in Europe. A famous Parisian courtesan called Marie Duplessis wore a camellia flower to signify whether she was open to suitors, a red camellia to show unavailability, and a white to show availability. Her beauty, charm, and fashion sense enabled her to escape a life of poverty and became popular among Parisian socialites, until her tragic and untimely death from tuberculosis in 1847, aged just 23. One of her suitors, rumored to be her true love, was novelist Alexandre Dumas, best known for The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo. He fictionalized the story of their doomed love affair in the novel The Lady of the Camellias, published within a year of Duplessis' death. This work, in turn, went on to inspire the opera La Traviata, in which the titular character wears a camellia just like Duplessis. When she rejects her suitor, feeling that love has no place in her life as a courtesan, she gives him her flower, saying to return when it has faded. He realizes this means she wants to see him the following day, giving him fresh hope. This cultural resonance lives on. Coco Chanel, for instance, was inspired by the tale to use the camellia as the symbol for her brand. Camellia's potential for symbolism has made it iconic across the world for a huge variety of reasons. In Brazil, the white camellia was strongly associated with the movement for the abolition of slavery. The flowers were uncommon there in that era. Most were grown in a quilombo, a settlement founded by formerly enslaved people who had escaped in Rio de Janeiro. So it became known that those wearing a camellia, or with camellias in their garden, was a clear, if subversive, sign of support for abolitionism. The flower's presence helped create a sort of identification code, for instance to show who would be willing to aid and hide fugitives. In 1888, Princess Isabel, Princess Imperial of Brazil, an eventual anti-slavery advocate, toured the city of Petropolis in a carriage covered with camellias to mobilize the upper classes to the cause. Isabel signed the Lei Aurea the same year, which abolished slavery in the country, the last American country to do so. It was one of her last acts in her position, The Brazilian imperial family was overthrown through a military coup the following year, and she lived out the rest of her life in exile in France. In New Zealand, at around the same time, Camellia was the symbol of another critical progressive moment, suffrage. One member of parliament encouraged supporting peers to wear a white camellia in their buttonhole, but this was quickly countered by the opposing anti-suffrage side, whose supporters donned red camellias, leading to the Battle of the Buttonholes. White camellias won, and New Zealand's women secured the right to vote in 1893, the first nation in the world to do so. Here in the States, camellias have become associated with the American South, where they grow most abundantly. It's even the state flower of Alabama, where it symbolizes beauty, grace, and hospitality. Though on occasion, the plant has also been appropriated by very dangerous movements. The Knights of the White Camellia was a white supremacy organization with links to the Ku Klux Klan, who terrorized Louisiana's black population in the 1860s, potentially killing up to 1,800 people. Thankfully, the organization was fairly short-lived, and this appropriation has not spread much further. So we've seen that camellia's big, showy flowers often catch the eye of people. This is, of course, just a side effect. They have evolved that way to attract pollinators. In Japan, for instance, camellias are not just pollinated by insects, but also by birds. A small bird called the mountain white-eye, named for its distinctive white rings around its eyes, will perch directly on the red flowers of the Japanese camellia to sip at the nectar within. While isolating in the imperial palace through the COVID-19 pandemic, keen birder and photographer, Her Imperial Highness, Princess Takamado, observed these birds feeding many times and theorized that this relationship is probably why the flowers are so robust and the petals well attached. A bird weighs a lot more than a bee, after all. In China, the Camellia oleifera plant mostly attracts insects, honeybees, but also hoverflies and other flies. This particular species is valuable for producing tea seed oil, which is a very common cooking oil in China. There are concerns that pollinator declines may threaten this important industry, and here in the US, even though camellias are non-native, they're still valuable to pollinators. European honeybees, also non-native but important for our honey industry and many fruit crops, often rely on them as the flowers are some of the first of the year and are rich in nectar. Even overwintering hummingbirds may visit these flowers in the south. So if you want to attract insects and birds to your garden, camellias are a great choice. They're also a great aesthetic option, and if you're feeling productive, you can even make your own camellia oil from some varieties. By pressing the seeds, you can create an oil that's great for the skin. In fact, it's been used as a moisturizer in Japan for centuries. Different camellias deal well with different climates. With over 20,000 cultivars out there, there's something for almost everybody. Thus, they like slightly acidic soil and partial shade, enough light to grow flowers, but not so much that it bleaches the buds. Depending on the variety, you can get flowers even in the darkest and coldest months, which is why the plant is sometimes called the winter rose. So there's kind of two camps of camellias if you're looking at them for your garden. Some of them tend to flower in the fall, say starting in October through November-ish, maybe even into December, and then others that flower more midwinter, so maybe January, February. And so you have to really look at the varieties before you choose. Thankfully, camellias are no longer the domain of the rich and wealthy, and all of us can enjoy these flowers. Their versatility and diversity has made them a favorite across the world, not just for people, but for a range of animals who feed on their nectar. And besides their leaves being brewed by millions, they continue to have symbolic significance, a true demonstration of flower power. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to nature with Plant Connection. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to tap subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss the next episode. See you next time.